Yes, how are we all? I hope all is well. My name is Sachin, and this is the Total Cricket Podcast, episode 35. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the third test between England and the West Indies, so let's get right into it. England won this one by 9 wickets, and in doing so, clinched the series 2 games to 1. This was a game dominated by the bowlers, but they were certainly made to work for the victory by a resilient West Indies team. Now, I'll begin with the team news, and the West Indies, they were unchanged from that famous win at Headingley. As for England, they made one change with Toby Rowland-Jones coming back in for Chris Woakes. Now let's get into the recap. And West Indies, they won the toss, and Jason Holder decided to bat first. And at Lords, you'd think that batting first is a no-brainer, but given the overhead conditions on the first 2 days, it certainly proved to be a difficult decision, and the West Indies struggled awfully in this game with the bat. In the first innings, they were rolled for 123. The top score was Kieran Powell with 39. Got a little bit of help from Shai Hope, but apart from that, nothing to write home about for the West Indies. Not what you want when you bat first. For England, Ben Stokes was the chief destroyer with his career best figures 6 for 22. He was virtually unplayable. Toby Rowland-Jones chipped in with 2, as did Jimmy Anderson. Stuart Broad went wicketless, and England's reply, it wasn't much better, to be fair, 194 for them, but they did get a crucial 71-run lead, especially in those conditions, and Ben Stokes was the top scorer with 60. He got some able support from the lower order, particularly Stuart Broad with 38, doing a good job in building that lead for England. But the West Indies bowlers were very good. Kemar Roach getting on the honours board with a 5-wicket haul. Shannon Gabriel picked up 1, and Jason Holder got the remaining 4 wickets, and they didn't have to go to the spinners at all in that innings. The West Indies' second innings, it didn't go to plan either. 177 they managed, which meant that they only set England a target of 107, which wasn't going to be enough to trouble them, but they did slightly better this time around. Shai Hope, the top scorer, 62 he got, and again Kieran Powell did a decent job. He got 45, but apart from those two, very little to talk about for the West Indies. Jimmy Anderson picking up a 7-wicket haul, and in the process reaching the 500-wicket landmark. Stuart Broad picked up 2, and Toby Rowland-Jones, he picked up the other wicket. And England, their chase was pretty comfortable, particularly on that third day when the sun started to shine. Was a lot easier to bat than the first 2 days. Alistair Cook managing 17, and then it was Mark Stoneman and Tom Wesley, the new boys, guiding England home with 40 not out and 44 not out respectively. For the West Indies, Devendra Bishu was the only wicket taker. The rest of the bowlers went wicketless. And that was that. The game finishing very early, only going to tea on the third day, but it was by no means a thrashing. Now into the breakdown, and for the West Indies, this was a chance for them to build on that incredible victory in the second test. And my biggest question going into this game was that going to be another false dawn for the West Indies? And I'm a little bit torn on whether it was. The West Indies were beaten in this one fairly comfortably in the end, but they showed great resilience to hang in there on those first 2 days. At stumps on the first and second day, the game was fairly even, and you got to give them credit because they were able to fight in this game to make a game of it. But in the end, they weren't quite able to hold off England long enough. So for the West Indies, it was a difficult game, but it wasn't the end of the world. Looking at the series, I think it's a very positive series for them. No one thought they'd win a game. They managed to win a game. So that in itself, they have wildly exceeded expectations. And there are some positive signs for this West Indies test team, but the reality for the West Indies is that they haven't been able to string together consecutive victories since 2014, and this is now 9 consecutive series without a victory. So for the West Indies, the issue at the moment is consistency. There is some talent there, but we're not seeing it game in, game out. That's the next step for this team. But they are by no means a joke. They are by no means a complete write-off. There is something there. It just needs to be developed further to become something more than just a flash in the pan. So I'll begin with the batting for the West Indies. Now I have to caveat my analysis of the batsmen in this test because they were facing very difficult conditions. Those overhead conditions made it a nightmare for the batsmen in this test, particularly on those first 2 days. So I think we need to take the performance of the batsmen with a grain of salt. But I will begin with Craig Brathwaite, and he did not manage many in this test. He got 10 in the first innings before he was caught behind of Jimmy Anderson, and then in the second he was cleaned up by a Anderson in-swinger. Craig Brathwaite, his issue is starting innings. He does tend to be a slow starter, but if he can get through that period, that's when he knuckles down and he's there for the long haul. So that's Brathwaite's issue. That's why he's not an elite opener. He's a good player, he's a young player, and he's someone that the West Indies are going to rely on for years to come. So at the end of the day, for Brathwaite, still a very positive tour. His performance in the second test was very good, and for him, it's just about being a better starter. I love his temperament. I love the way he goes about his business. It's just about being a better starter for Craig Brathwaite. That's about it. Now on to Kieran Powell, and I thought he was very good in this game, Kieran Powell, in such difficult conditions. He got 39 in the first innings until a pretty soft dismissal, chipping it back to Ben Stokes, and then he got 45 in the second until he was cleaned up by Anderson. For Kieran Powell, he managed 142 runs in the 6 innings that he played this series, so it wasn't shocking, but it wasn't an amazing series for Kieran Powell, and that's sort of been the story of his test career. It's not terrible, but it's not great either, so West Indies are in a little bit of a difficult spot in terms of what to do with Kieran Powell, but he is a test opener. I like the way he goes about his business. It's just that he seems to get out in pretty soft ways. That first innings dismissal, he'd done all the hard work in such difficult conditions with the ball hooping around, and then he chips one back to the bowler. That's really disappointing, and he hasn't been able to register a 50 in the 6 games that he has played since his comeback. That's an issue, building on the starts that he has been getting. But I think the thing that may save him is the lack of alternatives for the West Indies. Unless Chris Gayle suddenly decides to return to Test cricket, and he has to prove his fitness, may I add. He's 37 years old, Chris Gayle, so it's definitely not a long-term option. If he doesn't return, then I think Kieran Powell will be safe. I have been feeling that he shouldn't be in the team, but the West Indies are not blessed with a lot of talent in the opening slot. So I think Kieran Powell will be given another series. It's time for him, though, to convert his starts. Kyle Hope, continuation of what has been a shocking series for Kyle Hope. He's only managed 41 runs in the 6 innings. He's played a very inauspicious start to his test career. In the first innings, he nicked off to Anderson, and then in the second innings, he was trapped LBW by Stuart Broad. Kyle Hope just looked absolutely out of his depth in this series. It's as simple as that. And to be fair to Kyle Hope, to make your debut in this series against this English fast bowling attack, coming in at number 3 in difficult conditions to bat in for the most part, it's not an easy task. A lot of batsmen who've played 10 times the matches he has would struggle in these conditions. But unfortunately, this is the reality of Test cricket. You're going to come across difficult conditions, great players in the opposition. And the fact that he wasn't able to score runs in any of the 6 innings I don't think is a good sign. He just didn't quite have the technique to last. We saw the openers, Kieran Powell and Craig Brathwaite, they were able to survive, but Kyle Hope, he wasn't able to do that. And with Darren Bravo's return to the team seemingly imminent, you would think for the next series that he will be available for selection. I feel like this is the end for Kyle Hope. Now, Shai Hope, his brother, the continuation of a breakout series for him. He was the top scorer in the series, and I gotta say, congratulations to Shai Hope. He was actually the joint player of the series along with Jimmy Anderson. 375 runs for him in 6 innings, and he was able to boost his overall test average from 19 to 31, a lot more respectable, and it is a much better illustration of his talent. And in the first innings, he got a good start, but then he nicked off against Toby Rowland-Jones. And in the second innings, a similar story, caught behind off Anderson, but scores of 29 and 62 were very decent given these circumstances. And Shai Hope has provided hope to the West Indies. He has a great temperament. He is able to weather the storm, but he's also able to put the pressure back on the bowlers. His cover drive is exquisite. That's going to be one of the most picturesque cover drives to watch in world cricket for many years to come. He's so elegant, just like a lot of old school West Indian batsmen. He is from that school of incredible flair and elegance. Shai Hope has come of age in this series. He's had talent, but it hasn't showed. But in this series, he came up big, particularly in his second and third tests. And when I look at the potential 3 and 4 for the West Indies, Darren Bravo at 3, Shai Hope at 4, they can build around them for years to come. That batting lineup, having those two talents in key positions, that can only be a good team for this team that is trying to reassert itself as a power in world cricket. So Shai Hope, the future of the West Indies team, no doubt. Now, Roston Chase again struggled with the bat, and for Roston Chase, it was a difficult series after being the best batsman for West Indies over the past year. He struggled in this series a great deal. 80 runs in 6 innings. In the first, he was clean bowled by possibly the best ball he will ever face in his life, by Ben Stokes. That was unplayable, admittedly, from Ben Stokes. In the second innings, he nicked off to Anderson. But for Roston Chase, I think the theme of this series was getting caught on the crease. He's a tall man, doesn't move his feet a great deal. He's not someone who likes to come forward, likes to hang on the back foot. And I think he was found wanting technically in these conditions that are so conducive to swing bowling. Hanging on the back foot makes it really difficult for you, because it gives that extra time for the ball to do something off the pitch or through the air. And he struggled to adapt to the English conditions. But that's not to say that the West Indies should discard Roston Chase. He's clearly a talented batsman, but he needs to make that adjustment in these kinds of conditions to be an excellent, excellent player. I feel we've seen how on the slower pitches in the West Indies, in the UAE, he's been really successful, because by hanging back, he's able to line the bowling up, gets a little bit extra time to line the bowling up, and he'll just hit it away. But in these conditions where the ball is doing a lot more, it's a bit counterproductive. So that's something Roston Chase can look at. Now, Jermaine Blackwood in this test was nothing short of abysmal. In the first innings, Wild Hoik clean bowled by Rowland-Jones. And in the second, again, Wild Hoik caught behind off Anderson. Jermaine Blackwood only knows one way. He's going to play all kinds of strokes. Doesn't matter what the conditions, doesn't matter who the bowler is. He's just going to do what he wants to do. And I think in this test, the flaw in that approach was exposed. Now, Jermaine Blackwood, I like his aggression, I like his intent, but there's a point when you need to tone it down a bit. You need to rein it in. In these conditions, it's very difficult to bat. You need to be able to spend time at the crease. you have to take your time a little bit and you have to be a little bit more selective with your stroke play. Just taking wild hacks, you're very likely to edge the ball or miss it in these conditions with the ball basically doing something every single delivery. So for Jermaine Blackwood, the approach can come off like it did in the second test, or it can make you look very stupid like it did in this test. He's a talented player, Jermaine Blackwood, but again, as I said in the last game, if he wants to make more substantial contributions, there needs to be a sense of balance to his game. He needs to play the percentages a little bit more and build his innings, be aware of the situation of the game, aware of the conditions. It's, I think, extremely naive to play the same way no matter what. Test cricket, you come across different circumstances in basically every single game, and the best batsmen adapt to those. That's what Blackwood needs to do. Now, Shane Dowrich, he had a awful series, managed just the 24 runs in 6 innings. That's nearly half as many as Kyle Hope. Incredibly poor was Dowrich with the bat. Looked absolutely clueless against the moving ball. Looked like a tail ender, and his keeping was something else. Dropped an absolute sitter in this game, and not only that, but his keeping has flattered to deceive in most of the other test matches he's played. That was not an aberration, and as such, I feel he's going to come under pressure now for his spot. Dinesh Ramdin had a very good CPL, but even if you don't think 2020 form is relevant, which it probably isn't, Ramdin's a very experienced guy. He's a better keeper than Dowrich, and while he doesn't average above 30 either, Dowrich averages, I think, 24. Ramdin's is only a little bit better. Ramdin has test centuries to his name, so I would feel that Dowrich, he'll have to go for the next series. I can't see him getting another chance. So that's it for the West Indies batting. As I said, very difficult conditions, but some of the players are clearly not up to the test standard. Some are struggling at the moment for consistency. Others are showing real talent at this level. So a mixed bag for the West Indies batting, but there is something there. There is hope for the West Indies. Into the West Indies bowling, and I thought the bowlers did a really good job. And it was Kemar Roach getting a 5-wicket haul. This has been a great series for Kemar Roach. He's taken 11 wickets in the 3 games, and this is after his last test series he played in Australia. He played all 3 tests. He didn't even take a single wicket, so big turnaround for Kemar Roach. Yes, he's never going to be as quick as he was when he burst onto the scene. Had a major shoulder injury in 2014 that certainly derailed his career somewhat, but he's still a quality test bowler if he can bowl like this. With Kemar Roach, he delivers the ball with a great angle. That's the thing that makes him good. The angles that he creates, taking it away from the left-hander and in to the right-hander, and then not only that, getting it to move the other way off the seam. That's when Kemar Roach is at his best. In the second innings, he only bowled a 1 over. He was injured, couldn't bowl anymore, so hopefully that's nothing too serious for the West Indies, but big plus that Kemar Roach has come back to lead this attack. I think it's a big thing for the West Indies going forward to have Kemar Roach. Shannon Gabriel wasn't quite at his best in this game. He did take 1 wicket. That was an excellent delivery to Ben Stokes. In fact, to Ben Stokes in general, it was unbelievable the way that Gabriel was bowling. He had a catch dropped off his bowling off Stokes, and then a while later, on 60, Ben Stokes, he bowled him with an absolute jaffer that nipped a mile back in off the seam, but it was a no ball. His no ball issues coming back to haunt him. He bowled 6 in this spell, but then amazingly, 2 balls later, he bowled him again. So that shows the quality of Shannon Gabriel, but also the issues he has with his rhythm. If he can iron out those issues, then he's going to be next to unstoppable. He's a very good bowler, Shannon Gabriel. Bowls 145, gets steep bounce, and he has worked on his consistency, has control to his bowling now. He's a very difficult bowler to face. Has great seam presentation, gets the ball to nip off the surface. Again, him and Roach as an opening bowling attack is nothing to scoff at. Jason Holder, he was rewarded for his great work in the second innings of the second test in this game, got 4 wickets. And as I've said before, with Jason Holder, what I love is his control and his relentless mindset. He doesn't mind just plugging away on a length. He will keep that. He's not a guy that is always searching for wickets. He is just probing, probing, probing. I like that mentality because he's not the quickest bowler. That's a fact. So he has to rely on his consistency to outfox the batsman, hope that they lose patience. So I think Jason Holder has the right mindset to his bowling, and particularly the wicket of Joe Root. To get Joe Root out for 1 was fantastic work from Jason Holder. He took 8 wickets in the 3 games, continues his development as a bowler. I like Jason Holder. The fact is he's never going to be a strike bowler because of his pace. He only bowls 125 to 130, but I love his workman-like attitude, and with his height, with his control, he'll take wickets, and he's an excellent foil to the very explosive Shannon Gabriel and Kemar Roach. The West Indies pace attack looks good. And bear in mind, you've got the 20-year-old Alzari Joseph waving in the wing, so good signs for West Indies there. The second innings on a whole for the West Indies bowling, very difficult to read a lot into it. They knew the game was up there, and that's why we didn't see the best of Shannon Gabriel or Jason Holder. As I mentioned before, Kemar Roach just bowled the 1 over as he picked up an injury. It was mainly the spinners. Devendra Bishu wasn't used in the first innings, and I think rightly so given the conditions. He bowled the 11 overs, picked up the wicket of Alistair Cook with a really nice leg break. But for Devendra Bishu, he wasn't used a lot in this series. Jason Holder didn't seem to have a great deal of confidence in Devendra Bishu, so in that sense, I wonder why he was picked if he wasn't going to be treated like a frontline bowler. That was certainly a bit bizarre, but Devendra Bishu's a very handy leg spinner, and while he's not a world-class player, he is a good spinner, particularly when they play on the slower wickets. He's pretty crucial to this West Indies team. Boston Chase, he just bowled the 5 overs. A few pies, really, he served up, but that's it for the West Indies bowling. So for the West Indies now, looking ahead, they have to build on this. Their next series is in about a month against Zimbabwe, and that is going to be huge for them. Zimbabwe had a good tour of Sri Lanka, but they're still probably the worst test team in the world. So this is a chance for the West Indies to string some wins together. It's a 2-match series. They'll be hoping they can win 2-0. I think anything less than that would be a step backwards for the West Indies, but hopefully for them, they can get back Darren Bravo into the mix, sort out the Shane Dowrich situation they need to fix that keeper spot, and then just build some consistency with this group. They have a core group now. Keep playing, gain experience, and start to string performances together. That's the next step for this West Indies team. So I think in that sense, the Zimbabwe tour is a good one for them to have a really good shot at building on what they've done in this series. A few more things to talk about for the West Indies. That Jason Holder continues to make some slightly bizarre tactical choices. I think, to be fair to him, you sort of have to bat in the first innings at Lord's. I don't think that was the worst decision ever. It was going to be mightily difficult whoever batted. At the end of the day, in the first innings of both teams, it was extremely difficult to bat. So I don't think there was a great deal wrong with that decision. But what I found quite bizarre was one moment when the West Indies had England on the ropes. They were, I think, 63 for 5. At that point, David Malan had just been removed. This was shortly after the rain delay, and he only had 2 slips when Ben Stokes was facing Shannon Gabriel. Stokes nicks one. Kyle Hope at second slip dives valiantly, gets a hand on it, but it's just a little bit too far away for him to haul it in. If he had had 3 slips there, that would have been a sitter to third slip, and I find it difficult to comprehend that when you've got the opposition 63 for 5, when you have to attack to stay in the game, you've only got 60 more runs to play with, when the conditions are so helpful for bowling, when Shannon Gabriel, such an explosive bowler, is running in, and when Ben Stokes, such an explosive batsman, is just starting his innings after a rain delay, to only have 2 slips, bearing in mind all that stuff, boggles my mind. I love Jason Holder. I love his attitude, his stoicism. Very few players could do this job, I feel. It's a difficult job being the West Indies captain at the moment. But tactically, I'm not sure what he's doing. He has to improve tactically as a captain. And in that same breath, the fielding wasn't great for the West Indies throughout this series. They dropped 10 catches, and the West Indies need to start taking their catches. Their slip fielding left a lot to be desired. If they're going to bridge that gap between the better teams more often than not, they need to be sharper in the field. I think that if you had a look at this game, though, what I would say the difference was that moment to Stokes. If they had gotten Stokes right there, I don't think England would have gotten a lead. And then I thought the way they bowled to Broad and Roland Jones at the end, it was classic bowling to tail enders, banging it in short, having a completely different approach compared to bowling to the frontline batsman. Just bowl like you would to a batsman, topple off, keep it simple. That's when the game really got away from the West Indies. And then I think on the third day, when the overcast conditions had abated somewhat, they were much more friendly batting conditions. They subsided pretty quickly on that third morning. They were 93 for 3 at stumps, and then they were bowled out for 77. So that was not great from the West Indies batting. Just these little things that added up in this game that cost them. But it was by no means a humiliating defeat. I give great credit to the West Indies after getting skittled for 123, the comeback, and again skittle England for under 200. And then on that second night, when they were facing that deficit, they were able to grind through that night. When they reduced to 21 for 2, Shea Hope and Kieran Powell guided them to stumps. So that was really good from the West Indies. But it's just about carrying that on. There's just a few too many little errors that are adding up for the West Indies. But to sum up, good series for the West Indies, plenty to take from it, plenty to improve on. But I think most importantly, there are some promising signs for the West Indies. And a lot of people clamoring for all their big stars to come back. People need to wake up and smell the roses. As I suspected, Jason Holder confirmed as much in his post-match press conference. A lot of these players don't want to play for the West Indies. If your heart is not in it, then don't play. You've only got Darren Bravo, really, who's going to come back in. This is the group that West Indies are going to have to use. And there's some talent there. A lot of those players, those big stars, haven't played first-class cricket or test cricket for years. They're over the age of 30. They're not going to make this team incredible overnight. It will just be a short-term solution, a band-aid. The West Indies need something more long-term. So hopefully we do see that. And as I said before, their next test assignment is against Zimbabwe in about a month. Now on to England, and this was a good game for England to come back after that chastening defeat in the second test and to win fairly comfortably in the end. They had to, really, didn't they? There was a lot of pressure on them. But what did we learn for England in this series? The usual suspects bailing them out. I think that for England, they'll be disappointed on the whole with how the summer has gone personnel-wise. They've won both the series, but have they got any closer to solving a lot of the issues they had coming into the summer? I don't think so. It's been the summer of unanswered questions for England. But nonetheless, I'll begin with their batting. And again, I have to say that in that first innings, very difficult batting conditions. Alistair Cook, he didn't have a great game, did Alistair Cook. He managed just a 10 in the first innings till he nicked off to Kemar Roach. And then in the second innings, trapped LBW to Devendra Vishu. With Alistair Cook, he was still England's top run scorer in this series, in part mostly due to that double century, admittedly. But with Alistair Cook, you know what you get with him. Elite player, very little to talk about. Sometimes as an opener, you get some really good deliveries. That's just part of the job. Alistair Cook, though, still scores runs more often than he doesn't. Alistair Cook still scores runs more often than not. Now for England, I would like to talk about Stoneman, Wesley and Malan together because I feel they need to be grouped together as the guys who have made their debuts this summer. And a similar story for all of them. in this game. Mark Stoneman, he was caught behind in the first innings of Roach. Wesley again trapped LBW off Holder, and then Milan as well was caught behind off Roach. But then in the second innings, Stoneman and Wesley were able to guide England home, although I will caveat that by the fact that they were facing some very lackluster West Indies bowling. Roston Chase was bowling absolute pies, and Devendra Bishu was throwing up the occasional loose ball. So, in terms of how difficult these runs were, I don't think these two will score many easier test runs. So, I feel like we can't say that those innings are incredible innings because it was so easy. They're going to face much more testing spells in the Ashes. So, now looking at their series as a whole, Stoneman and Milan have been okay. Stoneman 120 runs in 5 innings with 150, Milan 154 runs in 4 innings with 250s. But the thing is, while neither of them have been shocking, they haven't been good enough to cement their place. And can the English really have great confidence in them succeeding in the Ashes? I don't think so. So England are in a difficult situation here. Tom Wesley, though, was terrible in this series. He managed 71 in the 5 that he played, and 44 of them were in that chase when Roston Chase was bowling pies. So in reality, it was a shocking series for Wesley when it counted. And between the 3 of them, they've played 22 innings in their test careers, and the highest score is 65. That is terrible. They're not making sizable enough contributions. The English batting is relying so heavily on the other players, and they're in a huge spot of bother here. I think all 3 of them will go to Australia, but they will take backups. But looking at them all individually, Stoneman is a limited player, but he has a bit of grit about him that you need in the opening slot. Milan has changed his game. Usually a very attacking, limited overs player has knuckled down, but it's been a graft for him. There's been no fluency to his innings. And Wesley, beautiful stroke player, lovely to watch, but he is terribly loose technically. So there's pros and cons to all these players. And I've been talking about this all summer. England are no closer to solving these issues in the top order now than they were at the beginning of the summer. So a big issue for England still. But now to Joe Root, and this broke his streak of getting at least a 50 in 12 consecutive games. He managed just the 1 in the first innings, got a fantastic delivery from Jason Holder. Nothing much to really say about Joe Root. Had an excellent series, excellent summer, as I've said before. Needs to work on that conversion rate, but he's one of the best batsmen in Test cricket. Ben Stokes, once again, showing how good an all-rounder he is. I keep going back and forth about who's a better all-rounder, him or Shakib Al Hasan, but I think I've come to a reasonable conclusion. In Asia, Shakib is the best all-rounder. Outside Asia, Ben Stokes is the best all-rounder. I'm pretty happy with that assessment. I'll focus on his batting for the moment, and he was lucky, Ben Stokes, but he made that chance count, and he got a crucial 60 that helped create a lead for England, as usual, taking the attack to the bowlers, counter-attacking, has a great range of strokes, does Ben Stokes. And once again, his ability to turn games on their head, invaluable to this England team. Johnny Bairstow has had a very poor series with the bat, has managed just the 59 runs in 4 innings. Now, I feel like a lot of the dismissals for Bairstow have been lapses in concentration, laziness. This innings, he was trapped on the crease by Roach, nipped back, plumb in front. I think Johnny Bairstow has been a bit lazy this summer. And to be fair to him, there haven't been many occasions in which he has been needed to score a lot of runs, because we've seen either Root or Cook in the top order, and then Moeen and Stokes in the middle order score the bulk of the runs. But Bairstow, he had such an amazing 2016, a lukewarm 2017, but he's a much improved player from when he first played for England. They'll hope that he can iron out these few little Kings heading into the Ashes. And the last thing to touch on with Jonny Bairstow is his wicket keeping has been steadily improving over time. He's still not a great keeper by any means, but he's come a long way, Jonny Bairstow, to be a serviceable keeper at this level. Moeen Ali just managed the 3. He was caught in the gully by Shea Hobart. Pretty standard Moeen dismissal, just going after the ball. Moeen's not one to leave deliveries. He's a little bit loose playing outside off stump. That's why he's not a top order batsman. He's a middle order batsman. But we know in Moeen what he can bring to that middle order. Now the English bowling, and there's only one man to start with, and that is Jimmy Anderson, picking up his 500th Test wicket, becoming the 6th man to take 500 Test wickets, the 3rd fast bowler to do so. What an achievement for James Anderson, one of the legends of the game, no doubt, being in such esteemed company. Incredible stuff from James Anderson. Now, the interesting thing about Anderson is a lot of people call him a home bully. He only performs at home. And while he does have a much better record at home, he's taken 326 wickets at an average of 24 at home compared to 171 at an average of 33 away from home. And no other fast bowler has taken more wickets at home than him. But the thing about Anderson is that he's actually improved away from home as his career has progressed. In his first 50 tests, he played 19 away, took 52 wickets at 43. In the next 50 tests, he played 23 away from home and he took 82 wickets at 31. In his last 11 away tests, that is since he's reached the 100 test milestone, he's taken 37 wickets at just under 24. So he's steadily improved away from home over time. And I would like to say that almost every bowler who's ever bowled has a better record at home than away. I think it's a pretty weak argument to knock Anderson with. At the end of the day, this guy has been nothing but incredible for England, with Stuart Broad forming the best opening bowling partnership of the last decade, one of the best that we've ever seen. We know Anderson's strengths. He's able to swing the ball both ways with unrelenting accuracy. But the thing that sets him apart is the way he's able to set up batsmen. He's an incredibly intelligent bowler, and his plans are a joy to watch for a die-hard cricket fan to see the way he goes about getting the batsman out. It's incredible to watch. At the age of 35, he's still going strong. James Anderson, what a player he has been for Test cricket. And in this game, it was no different. Picked up 9 wickets, including 7 in the second innings, doing his thing as usual, with the in-swinger getting a lot of people bowled, and with the outswinger getting a lot of people caught behind. Jimmy Anderson, you know the drill. Stuart Broad, again, I think was a little bit unlucky. He took just the 2 wickets in the game, although I thought he bowled very well. In fact, Stuart Broad has taken just the 20 wickets this summer at 34, but crucially, there's been 10 catches dropped off his bowling. He has been unlucky. I think Stuart Broad is still a fantastic bowler. He's showing no signs of aging. I've said a few times this summer he's lost his outswinger, but he's developed the in-swinger, and he's also developed some cutters to his bowling. So I think he's definitely a more rounded bowler than he was many a year ago. And with Stuart Broad, he's known for some of the best spells that we've seen in the past decade in Test cricket. The fact is that he's a guy who'll pick up his wickets in a glut. So if that's around the corner for Stuart Broad in the Ashes, then I don't think he'll mind the fact he's been a little unlucky in this series. He also came back to some sort of form with the bat this series. He's been pretty awful with the bat in the last few years, but got a nice 50 in the first game, and in this game got that crucial 38 down the order to get England's lead up. So I think that's also positive for England. Toby Rowland-Jones did a really good job in this game as well. Picked up 2 wickets in the first innings and 1 wicket in the second innings. I like what Rowland-Jones brings. He's a tall bowler, gets a little bit of bounce, and also, like any typical English seamer, has great control. And this whole thing makes me question, why did they pick Woakes in the first place when he was underdone? I know they wanted to give him some game time before the Ashes, but Toby Rowland-Jones was your best bet if you wanted to do everything in your power to win that second game. England got complacent in that game, and that loss meant that they had to get back into ultra-serious competitive mode, and as such, Roland Jones was drafted back in for Wokes. I think that the work he's done over this summer, Roland Jones, has got him a place on that plane down to Australia, and again, he offers something late down the order, can hit the long ball, no doubt. Now, Ben Stokes, wow, he was unbelievable with the ball in this game. It hasn't been a particularly great summer for Ben Stokes with the ball, admittedly, but in this game, he more than made up for the average summer he's had with the ball and showed again his match-winning potential with both the bat and the ball. The amount of swing that he was able to generate, I've never seen as much swing. He was swinging it more than Anderson does, and some of those deliveries were a joke. The ball that got chased was something else. It really was swinging in and then nipped away off the seam, took his off stump out, and then to Jason Holder, it hooped back in to the stumps and castled him. That was also virtually unplayable. He was swinging the ball both ways with great control. He's such a skillful bowler, Ben Stokes, and he's an impact bowler. He's not a guy who's going to get you a haul in every inning. Sometimes he'll be a little bit expensive, but he's capable of this. What a match winner he is, and to me, he is essential to this England's team's success. Ben Stokes, what a cricketer he is. Moeen Ali, he didn't have to bowl too much in this game given the conditions, but that's it for the England bowling. The last thing I would like to talk about with England is their catching this series. They've dropped 16 catches. That's not good enough. And in this test, we saw Alistair Cook again put a few down in the slips. Ben Stokes dropped a couple as well. And really, they can't afford this, can England, in Australia, where it's going to be harder for them to generate as many wicket-taking opportunities as they do in England. They have to be a lot sharper than they have been this summer, particularly in the slips where they've been nothing short of awful. So that's one thing that England really have to get sorted. Looking ahead to the Ashes, as I said, still big question marks over that opening partner, Alistair Cook, the number 3 and the number 5. And as such, I think they'll take a couple of guys as backups to Australia. I would like to see Haseeb Hameed be the backup opener. He has test match experience. He showed he can compete with the best against India. Yes, he had a terrible county championship season. But the thing is, you have to take a chance. And I think he's the best guy that England can pick, has a great temperament, has shown that he's not flustered by the big occasion. So I like Haseeb Hameed. And in that middle order, I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Hales gets a call up. He didn't have the best of times as a test opener, but I think he might be more suited to the middle order. I also wouldn't be surprised if Gary Ballance was taken. I know that he's failed a lot, and I don't think he should play for England again. He's proven time and time again he's not quite good enough, but I wouldn't be surprised if England take him, given his experience, given how much Joe Root likes him, his Yorkshire teammate. And then there's a few outside bets guys like Liam Livingstone. He's been very good this season in the county championship, made his debut in that 2020 series against South Africa, and maybe even someone like Ian Bell, a real left field selection, someone with vast test match and Ashes experience. In terms of the bowling, I think this bowling attack is a little bit one-dimensional, going to a place which isn't anywhere near as conducive to swing bowling in Australia. I think that the bounce that Roland Jones can generate is a big plus for him, but I think they'll hope that Wood and Stephen Finn can get back to their best. They're bowlers who can both bowl 140 plus. They need a little bit of pace in this attack, I feel, if they're going to really be successful. In terms of the spin bowling, Australia is usually a spinning graveyard. I can't see Moeen Ali being particularly successful. I know he's become a serviceable spinner, but in Australian conditions, I can't see him being a huge wicket-taking threat. That's why I like that it appears that Mason Crane will get a chance, the young leg spinner who has experience in Australian first-class cricket. He played a little bit for New South Wales last Sheffield Shield season as a wrist spinner, an attacking option. I like that idea from England. But that's it for the series. It was certainly an enjoyable series that ebbed and flowed a great deal, positive for the West Indies and for England. It was again a case of unanswered questions. Now looking ahead to the rest of the tour, First things first, the West Indies play Ireland in an ODI. That's on Wednesday, before we have a solitary 2020 between England and the West Indies. And then we move on to the ODI series between England and the West Indies. 5 matches there will be there. So I look forward to that. But that is it for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can check it out. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. All those links can be found on the Twitter page. The next few podcasts, I will be looking at the Independence Cup, the series between Pakistan and the World 11. Certainly going to be a big series in the cricketing world, a landmark series for Pakistan cricket. So I look forward to that. But until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.